What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Mets Central Podcast, episode 75. We are going to discuss the latest in Mets land as they just lost 2 out of 3 to the Reds, very close to getting swept, which is a very big concern. They retired David Wright's number over the past weekend, and the trade deadline rumors heating up a little bit more. And on top of that, we have, of course, things to discuss with the series coming up as they do play another team that they should beat in theory, but that's not easy apparently in Metsland. We're going to talk about it. A lot of frustration from my end, at least. I don't know how Matt's going to feel, but probably more calm than me, even though there is a lot of frustration with the fact that this team is still displaying the same issues we have seen since the first pitch on opening day in Houston. Just yet again, another series where you're left to be desired with this offense. But we'll talk about it all. Leave a like on your way in, or if you're watching on replay, subscribe if you guys are new to the channel, especially if you're Met fans, and turn on your notifications so you know when we upload or go live here on the channel. And if you are commenting in the live chat, we will get to your comments throughout the episode. We're not ignoring you. But yeah, like I said, just a very infuriating series from this baseball team, which it looked like maybe they were getting out of their rut a little bit from that Milwaukee series and the Yankee series. Then they dropped that series versus the Orioles, and it's like, okay, this is just very infuriating. But then they beat the Royals, and it's like, okay, maybe there are signs that things are improving, especially now that they're getting healthy in the rotation. But then it's kind of right back to square one where you're not getting volume from the rotation. You're not getting production from, most importantly, the top of the lineup, which is very concerning because those guys have not hit with runners in scoring position all year. And then on top of that, I mean, this bullpen, it's a revolving door every day with names. And guys are tired back there. So, Matt, I'll let you jump in with your thoughts on the series, just in terms of the frustration before we get into like the main recap. But just like the thing is with the offense, it's like, again, we've been seeing this since opening day, and I don't care how good their numbers are individually. If you're not hitting with runners in scoring position, then I don't care. It's a problem. It's like we talk about with hockey, where you could put up the individual numbers. I don't care if you're not getting the results.
Yeah, they didn't play well this series. They didn't. I think
Oh, they did not.
it's very simple to see. Like, and to be fair, you don't really have to deep dive that far into like statistics or anything to see that they're just not playing well over this last couple stretch. And we talked about it. It was nice to see that the offense, displayed some good tendencies against both the Brewers and the Yankees, where they both took those series 2 out of 3. But we always said that it's cool that we see those tendencies from time to time, but we really can't believe and trust fully in this offense until they show it over a longer period of time. And I mean, we saw from the Baltimore series, like, sure, I mean, they won that first game, but to be fair, when you look at that game, most of that game they were being shut out completely. It wasn't until a late time comeback where the Mets were able to salvage out that win. Then they lose the next two because the offense completely disappeared. And then same thing, you look at that Royal series. Cool, they won 2 out of 3, but again, look at how they won those. Look at how they won those games. The first game they had the lead for most of the game, but it was only a 1-run lead. The Royals come back, take the lead, and then thankfully a late time resurgence, similar to what we saw in the first game of the Orioles series. It pushed them towards a win. Second game, they only put up 3 runs. The offense, the starting pitching, and the bullpen carry them to that win. And then the third game, they're basically down 2-0 that whole game, have chance after chance to tie or take the lead in that game. They finally do it. They finally do it in the ninth inning, and then they end up losing. But again, you can't really blame the pitching for that when your offense is only putting up a grand total of 2 runs. And it was the same thing we saw in this series. It's like, and listen, don't get me wrong. Obviously, we'll get into the whole Carlos Mendoza bullpen decisions. He didn't have a great series, and he didn't have a great series entirely. But still, it all comes back down to the offense. And listen, we've been talking about the offense for the whole year now, and specifically, like, obviously the bottom of the line needs to be addressed because there's a couple guys that probably shouldn't even be in this lineup or anywhere close to a contending team, right? But the main reason why the Mets lost this series, And specifically when you look at the second game, right? Because obviously we were in attendance for that game, the whole David Wright ceremony. And again, congratulations to him for him getting his number retired. It was a very nice ceremony. But when you look at that game, the Mets didn't lose that game because the bottom of the lineup didn't show up. Because apart from Ronnie Mauricio, the bottom of the lineup had a pretty good game. It was the top of the order that they had chance after chance after chance coming up with guys in runners in scoring position, and they couldn't come through. And even like before we came on here, I had the numbers and I pulled it up. I pulled up the numbers of the top 6 guys in this lineup from this series. Brandon Nimmo, 4 for 11, 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. He had a decent series. Francisco Lindor, this is the concerning one. 0 for 14, 0 walks, 4 strikeouts. That's not even the worst part, because if you factor in the last game of the Royals series before we went to the All-Star break, Lindor took an 0 for 5 there. So in his last 19 at-bats, Lindor's 0 for 19 with 6 strikeouts. Juan Soto, 1 for 11, 2 walks, 5 strikeouts. Pete Alonso, 1 for 10, 0 walks, 2 strikeouts. Jeff McNeil, he had a nice series, 2 for 6, 4 walks, 0 Ks. Mark Vientos, 2 for 11, 0 walks, 3 Ks. In total, when you add up all the plate appearances and all the hits, the top of the lineup in this series went 10 for 63, a 159 batting average with 8 walks, 18 strikeouts. It's not good enough. That is absolutely not good enough, and you're not going to win baseball series like that, and not even baseball series against the Reds. If your top guys going to the postseason are not going to perform up to the standard that we expect them to, they're not going to deep either. And listen, we can all, and I talked about this on the postgame show that I did yesterday, like the Mets could add all the reinforcements that they could. They could add another bat. But at the end of the day, when the top guys come to this season are not playing to the caliber that we are expecting them to and to the caliber at which they're being paid for, then this team isn't going to make a deep run. It all depends on them. And the main one is Francisco Lindor, because, and I'm sorry that I'm talking for this long, but even SNY say they put up a graphic that showed the difference how Francisco Lindor plays and how this Mets team wins and loses when Lindor's playing well and when he isn't. Because I believe in the games that the Mets have won, Lindor is batting like 347 with 18 home runs, and then in the game that he's losing, the games that the Mets are losing, Lindor's only batting around 130, 125 with 1 home run. So that just shows you how much of an impact Francisco Lindor has on this team. And the fact that he's going through this really bad stretch of baseball right now, that's really hurting this team right now.
Yeah, like this is just where we're at. This is from Giraffe Neck Mark Twitter account. He said, since June 13th, the Mets are 11-20. 11-20. So they are playing 9 games below 500 ball in their last 30 or so. Pete Alonso has a 676 OPS in that span. Lindor has a 611. The only hitters qualified that have an above 700 OPS in the span are Brett Beatty with a 771, Brandon Nimmo with an 852, Juan Soto with a 980. And to further expand on this, he put in the thread, Tyrone Taylor has a 396 OPS over this time, Vientos with a 456, Torrance with a 500. So, yeah, it's awesome that Vientos had, like, 3 good games against the Kansas City Royals. Like, that's fantastic that he had his moment there to help them win a baseball game. But you are not winning this way. You just are not going to win baseball games this way. And I don't know. Forget about the internal help or just like improving within between the top guys. Like Alonso is not going to be this bad. Lindor is not going to be this bad. But at the same time, it's like, okay, even if these guys heat up, number one, what's going to happen? Is Soto going to cool off again? Is Brandon Nimmo going to cool off again? That's entirely possible because we've seen this all year where these guys take turns on their hot stretches, and that's baseball for you. But the other problem is that, one, you have the constant, which is, again, runners in scoring position. Congrats to them. They pulled ahead of the Rockies in batting average with runners in scoring position. If that's something that this team is proud of being, then that's awesome. I'm glad we're better than the Rockies, which should be the bare minimum, but you're still worse than 27 other teams in Major League Baseball, which for how much this offense is making is a complete and utter joke. And on top of that, I want everyone to have a realistic conversation with me. Does anybody here think David Stearns is going to beat out the offers that are going to be out there on the trade market for some of these guys. I mean, you already hear the Yankees have an absurd package on the table to potentially go get Eugenio Suarez. You think AJ Preller is going to get outbidded for Jarren Duran if he's truly interested? Dave Dombrowski, if he's looking to get a bat, I don't know, maybe they look to add someone to their line. Maybe they're in the market for Suarez, or they're in the market for some sort of bat. Does anybody think David Stearns is going to beat out any of those offers? So what does that leave you with? Luis Robert? Vomit because he's putting up just as bad numbers as Tyrone Taylor. I don't care. I don't want to hear about, oh, but the upside with Luis Robert. This team is not getting the upside from Luis Robert. They're not getting anything from their own younger guys. They're not getting production enough from the top of the order. What makes anybody think Luis Robert in this environment is going to bounce back? The only team I could see Robert going to and it working is the Dodgers because it's the Dodgers. So who are you getting? Are you trading for Marcell Ozuna? I don't think the Braves are trading him in division. So what's left? There's not enough sellers. Are you ready to empty the farm to go get Byron Buxton? Which he would have to waive his no trade clause. So is that even plausible? Is Brent Rooker available? And even then, think about how much you're going to have to give up. Is Stearns going to do that? So even if you want to get the external help, I don't know where it's coming from because I don't see anyone on the market that's going to be in the price range that David Stearns is going to be willing to give up. Unfortunately, that's the case. And this should be a year that you go in because at the end of the day, even though they are struggling with runners in scoring position, you don't know what's going to happen with Pete Alonso in the future. You don't know if Brandon Nimmo is going to give you this kind of year again. Juan Soto's playing great baseball. Lindor, Father Time will catch up at some point, even though he's been playing bad baseball. You don't know what you're going to get. So you should be going all in, but I just don't know if they're going to because that's just not in the MO of the GM, unfortunately. And then on top of that, what's the next option? Resorting to the prospects? Okay. Drew Gilbert? Is that where we're looking? Because every time a guy comes up here from AAA, the same thing happens. They don't perform because of the hitting coaches that we've talked about all year. And I hate that we're 75 episodes into this podcast, and I feel like I've brought it up on every single one, but it has to be said, unfortunately. This team is in danger of missing the playoffs at this rate. That's where we are. The Padres are right behind them. They fell down to the third wild card spot. Your best chance at this rate is winning the division. You have a better chance with winning the division than the wild card. And that's sad for a team that's making this much money, that has this much talent offensively, nonetheless, that should be way better offensively. And it's just ridiculous.
Look, they're gonna have to have a big deadline. That is that's an obvious statement. That is a layup statement. They're gonna need a lot of external help. Like I've been talking about, they're gonna need a couple pitchers, mostly more relievers, but they're definitely gonna have to add one starter or maybe two, depending, on how the rest of the rotation shakes out. But they're gonna need at least one big bat and couple maybe a little dead pieces as well, because right now, when you take a look at the bench with Marte and both Winker out, the bench is not exactly strong enough to even begin with. And cool, Francisco Alvarez is back. That theoretically should help. It theoretically should help. But we know how Eric Chavez is, and the moment Francisco Alvarez walked through those doors today at Citi Field, he's going to be talking about, oh, Francisco, I saw you pulling the ball in AAA. I saw you hitting home runs. We're not doing that anymore. Back to singles, back to opposite field hits. So, listen, I hope that Francisco Alvarez is able to turn it around and he's able to show us the type of player he is. And, we could see the type of player that he was back in 2023 when he first came up. But for me, I have to see it to kind of believe it. And again, not that I'm doubting the talent that he has. I'm just more concerned about the fact that the fucking stupid idiot hitting coach that we have is going to get in his ear and it's going to fuck up his confidence again. But that's a whole nother discussion. Look for David Stearns. He's going to have to get aggressive. And look, I don't think it's fair to say that it's in the MO that he can't be or is not willing to be aggressive, because when you only look at his time here, like he's only been here for a year and a half. And when you look at the trade deadline last year, sure, could he have been a little bit more aggressive? Absolutely. But this Mets team was also in a position where there was no guarantee they were exactly going to get into the playoffs. So I understand the hesitancy to fully
I'm
commit
talking about his
when
time in Milwaukee. He was
what
never aggressive in Milwaukee.
I mean, listen, sure, listen, you can absolutely point to that. But at the same time, when you look at the offseason this year or last offseason, the Mets were one of the finalists for Garrett Crochet. So they were willing to put a very good package out there to get one of the top starting pitchers out there on the market. Unfortunately, they just didn't have the prospect package to match the Boston Red Sox. And listen, I don't think you can't fault David Stearns on that completely, because one, he's only been here for a year and a half, so he hasn't, built up this good enough farm system to the point where they can actually where they can exactly compete and go out and match the top other prospect packages that other teams can put together. Maybe in the future in a couple of years, because obviously we've seen like Stearns has already had 2 drafts, and they've been decent drafts so far. Obviously, we're gonna have to see how those guys completely pan out in the future. But listen, it's one thing to want to be aggressive and to want to pull off those trades, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the capital to make those big time trades happen, then it's really one of those cases of how much can you do. But if we hear rumors that David Stearns has an opportunity to make a big trade, and he's hesitant to trade guys like Drew Gilbert or Ryan Clifford or like Acuna or guys like that, then yeah, sure, then I'm gonna have a problem with David Stearns at that point. But if he can't exactly go toe to toe and match prospect wise with offers from the Phillies, Padres, Dodgers, teams like that, then there's only so much he can do, because again, the prospect pool is not as deep as those other teams. So, but listen, we'll see what happens. Obviously,
That's also just part of the problem, though. It's like, if you don't have the prospects to do it, then I don't know where you go to get help. Like that's a big concern. It's like, even if Stearns does decide to get aggressive, which I have to see it to believe it, because he never did in Milwaukee, and last year I'm with you on that. I can't blame him, because his team was still out of the playoff race, or like on the fringe at that point. But even if he does get aggressive and they don't have the prospects to do it, I don't know where you're getting help outside of the reliever market, because there are so many quality relievers at least available to where it is impossible to mess this up. I mean, does Stearns do the crazy thing that we saw him do in Milwaukee? Does he go out and get a Duran and/or Clase and then flip Edwin Diaz, get prospects, use some of those prospects to help him get a bat? Like, is that an option? I wouldn't hate it, but I just really am curious if that's the route they go, because that's the whole reason I think they're going to acquire a quality reliever, is because not only the quantity of good relievers, but also the fact that you don't know what's going to happen with Diaz this offseason. And if you could save money there, that would be something that the Mets would want to do. So I don't know. This deadline's just going to be very strange. Do you have anything else you want to add before we get into the recap, though?
no, we can get into the recap.
All right. So we went on for a bit now. So game number 1, Sean Manaea versus Nick Lodolo. In the bottom of the first inning, Soto hits a solo shot to make it a 1-0 game. Brandon Nimmo in the bottom of the second walks, steals second. McNeil hits a single to make it 2-0. In the top of the fourth, Hayes hits a solo shot to make it 2-1. In the top of the fifth, Friedel gets hit by a pitch. McLean hits a home run to make it 3-2. In the top of the sixth, Hayes hits a solo shot yet again to make it 4-2. Steer walks, a wild pitch moves him over. Stevenson makes it 6-2 with a home run. In the seventh inning, McLean with a double. Ellie De La Cruz makes it 7-2 with a single. In the top of the eighth, Friedel gets hit by a pitch again. McLean ends up McLean, De La Cruz, and Hayes all walk. That made it 8-2. And then in the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs, Nimmo hits a double. Mauricio brings in a run with an error. McNeil walks. Beatty hits a single. Torrens hits a single to make it 8-4, but the Mets would not win as, unfortunately, uh, yeah, the offense teases in the ninth, but doesn't get it done. Game number 2 for David Wright's retirement game. It was Holmes versus Martinez in the bottom of the first inning. Nimmo hits a single. Alonso with 2 outs hits a single. Vientos drives in a run with a single to make it a 1-0 ball game. Beatty hits a solo shot to make it 2-0 in the bottom of the second. In the top of the third, Fraley hits a double. Marte gets hit by a pitch. A throwing error by Torrens, a really piss poor throwing error. Brings in a run to make it 2-1. McLean with a single to tie the game up at 2. In the top of the fourth, Hayes walked. Stevenson and Fraley hit singles to make it 3-2. In the top of the sixth, Hayes walks. Steer with a single. Stevenson hits to do a force out, which makes it 4-2. And then Fraley with a double to make it 5-2. That would end up being your final score of the game. And then we go to game number 3. It was David Peterson versus Andrew Abbott. In the top of the first inning, Friedel ends up getting on from an error. McLean with a single. De La Cruz hits a single to make it 1-0. In the bottom fifth, Beatty with a single, steals second. Acuna with a double makes it a 2-1 game at that point. In the top of the eighth, McLean walks. Diaz comes in for the 4-out save. De La Cruz walks. Hayes hits a single. Steer gets hit by a pitch, which ties the game up. And in the bottom of the eighth, Soto walks. McNeil hits a double, and Torrens with a grounder. Soto getting aggressive to steal a run there at the plate. Gets it done, and then Stanek locks it down. An up and down series for Carlos Mendoza. I do like, and the thing that scares me is that since they lost this game, Mendoza's going to be hesitant to do it again, even though he should. It's just unfortunate that backfired. I like that he used Diaz for a 4-out save there because the thought process is good. I like that tonight against a lefty, Brandon Nimmo's hitting leadoff. But overall, your thoughts with Carlos Mendoza, as I think the big elephant in the room is at game number 1 where he goes to Korea with a fresh bullpen. And not only that, he leaves him in to just go out there and die. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly touch upon the third game and the decision to put Edwin Diaz in the eighth inning to face Ellie De La Cruz. To me, and we've talked about this many times, I fully agree with that decision because one, you had Reed Garrett. He came in, he got the first 2 outs. He got the first 2 outs fairly quickly. It's a shame that he was able to that he couldn't get Matt McLean out and he walked him on 5 pitches. But that was the right move to pull Reed Garrett there and go to Edwin Diaz to face Ellie De La Cruz because again, their best hitters up. Put in your best reliever. And it's just a shame because, you can't kill Mendoza on that situation because it's one of those where made the right move. It's just the player just didn't have it. And it is what it is. It sucks. And listen, if the Mets ended up losing that game, I did not want to see anyone blaming Edwin Diaz because once again, how about the offense actually step up and get more than 2 runs in that situation? I understand that Diaz is supposed to be a lockdown closer. He's supposed to get the big timeouts. But as we talked about many of times on this podcast, none of these guys are human. They're not going to be perfect every single time. And look, after that third game, the Mets have played 100 games so far. Through 100 games, Edwin Diaz has only blown 2 saves. It was I believe the second game or the first game in LA against the Dodgers, and then this game against the Reds. Thankfully, the Mets won both of those games. So, they really didn't backfire in the long run. But again, can the offense take some pressure off this bullpen from time to time and not have to make Edwin Diaz, have to be, pitch perfect every single time? Because obviously, like in the situation that we just saw yesterday, sometimes he's not going to have it. But thankfully, they still won that game. Going back to the first game now, look, to me personally, and you might disagree, but you probably will disagree. I didn't have a problem going to Carrillo in the 5th inning. I'll explain why. You only had Sean Manaea there. He only went 4 innings, which sucks because he's on a pitch limit to begin with, and the fact that you couldn't get 5 innings out of him, it does sucks. It would have been more what's the word more. It would have been better for the long-term plan of that game if he went the full 5 innings, right? But he only goes 4 innings, And then I don't know if you were listening to the game yesterday or even watching the game, but they talked about Edwin Diaz wasn't even in the ballpark for that first game of the series. He was sick, so the Mets had to send him home for that game. So they were already down one key reliever for that game, regardless. So when you really look at it, in their bullpen, they only had, in terms of guys that you really trust, you had Garrett, Braley, and Braziban. So that's 5 innings now for only 3 really guys that you really fully believe in to get you, outs when you really have to. So sure, could they have gone 2 innings for one of them? They absolutely could. But you really would have had to gone and gotten 3 outs out of one of those, guys that you don't trust, whether that would have been a guy like Carrillo or whether that would have been a guy like Stanek. So they go to Carrillo. He gives up the 2 runs in the 5th inning. Listen, it sucks. It's all right, but you're only down 3-2, and for this offense, being down 3-2, it shouldn't be that big of a problem. They should still be able to come back. My problem is with Carrillo, why are you sending him back over the 6th inning? I didn't have a problem for him going to the 5th. It sucks they give up the 2 runs, but still, don't test your luck. You got the 3 outs. Get them out and go to your more trusted relievers in the 6th inning. That was my issue with Carrillo.
Here's the rebuttal I have to that. Which I didn't have as big of an issue with Carrillo coming into the game. My thought was with the Manaea thing, 2 things. One, I wanted to at least see him start that 5th inning because to me, I thought he was dealing out there, and I know that he's probably on a pitch limit, but then my counter to that is, okay, why is he starting the first game out of the All-Star break if he's on that much of a pitch limit? To me, that was just bizarre in itself. But aside from that, with the Carrillo thing, if you're going to put him out there, okay. My problem, again, is similar to what you had, which is why are you leaving him out there for that long? For me, I wanted Braziban to get 2 innings there because to me, it was a no-brainer, especially with the top/middle of the order coming up for the Reds. Go get one of your better relievers and that has gave you multiple innings. Also, is that Diaz thing true? Because I thought he was up when they started to rally in that 9th inning.
They said I mean, unless they misspoke, but Gary Cohen said yesterday he wasn't in the game on Friday. He wasn't there at Citi Field on Friday because the Mets had to send him home.
Unless someone else was warming up that day. I thought maybe I'm just mixing up that. I think I might be mixing up that game and the David Wright game where Diaz got up late. It could be that. But either way, yeah, I don't know. My thought was mostly that, but yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right that I don't hate using him as much in the 5th inning if the circumstance made sense in that regard with Diaz being out. But how do you send him back out there for the 6th after he allows a home run? That was just so stupid. And then not only that, leaving him out there for as many batters as you did, because after the Hayes home run, you would think, okay, now we got to pull him. Then he walks a batter. Okay, now we got to pull him. Stevenson hits a home run. Okay, now you got to pull him. Walks another batter. Okay, finally, they actually ended up pulling him. And the other thing, too, is how predictable that was because I was with Steven at that game, and I said on the post game, I was like, I know what's going to happen. They're going to get freaking Brandon Waddell up, and they're going to punt the game, even though they're down by 1 or 2 runs, which is just ridiculous. That was really more the issue than anything. It's just, again, how long Correa was in that game. That was just so stupid. And it's like, if you're going to look for 2 innings, just go to Waddell earlier even for the 2 innings. I trust Waddell way more than Correa. That was just bizarre to me.
Yeah, it's just it's another sign and another flaw of Mendoza where he just tries to be cute from time to time. It's like you have to know the limit. You have to know the limit of some of these relievers. Sure, listen, sometimes decisions are not going to work out, even if they're the right decision. Like I said with the Diaz one, sometimes your player's just not going to have it. But when you know that they don't have it, don't force the fact and don't put the risk out there to try and get another, inning out of him, because he didn't do it with Diaz in the final game. He saw that Diaz didn't have it in the 8th inning and he pulled him and he went to Stanek in the 9th inning. Now, whether people, trust Ryan Stanek or not, I know we certainly don't, but again, he saw Diaz didn't have it, got him out of that game. So I don't know why when you look at Carrillo, it's like, okay, doesn't have it in the 5th inning, gave up the 2-run home run for the rest to take the lead. yeah, let me send them out there to go and pitch another inning. It it was very similar to where in the final game of the Yankee series, where I believe it was the third inning that Zach Pop went out there. Zach
Yep.
Pop goes out there in the third inning, gives up the home run. I believe it was Dominguez, or I think, or I might have been wrong, but he gives
Bellinger, maybe.
Bellinger. It was one of them, but he gives up a home run to one of them. Okay, fine. Gives up the one home run. Fine. Get him
Wells. It
out
was
that inning.
Wells.
Yeah, Wells. Yes, it was Wells. Thank you. Okay, fine. Gets the one inning. Gives up the home run. Fine. But again, why are you sending him out there for the fourth inning? And then again, sure they pulled him, but they ended up giving up a couple more runs in that inning as a result of him starting that inning. So it's just again, and we talked about with the process, Mendoza's process sometimes just doesn't make any sense because there's some games where he's fully aggressive with the bullpen and he'll get the most trusted relievers out there as quickly as possible. And then there will be times in games where he'll try to be cute and try to get these lower end guys to get as many outs as possible. So I don't know. Mendoza just confuses me from time to times.
Yeah, and then it's like the other thing too. It's like, okay, so in that first game, you didn't want to use some of your quality arms. Like, okay, but Reed Garrett went back to back days. So, like, if he pitched that first game, would it have killed to have him go out there? And the thing that concerned me the most is when he said, well, when you're down by 3, 4 runs, you don't put your quality relievers in because that doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry, what? A 3-run game where you have one big inning and that could maybe change the baseball game. And I know this offense doesn't warrant that respect, but again, it's the process, like you just said, where why are you not just thinking from it philosophically where, okay, let's at least try to keep the team in the baseball game. That's what's just so frustrating to me about this stuff. And it's kind of the thing we talked about in terms of the Diaz thing with that last game. It's what I've talked about all year. Like Diaz is the only reliever they've shown any sort of like urgency and care with because they don't want his arm dead. The rest of them, they could all go out there and throw until their arms fall off. But Edwin Diaz, which it makes sense because of how much he's making, but it's also just so frustrating that it's like you pull Diaz because he doesn't have it. But the first game, the Carrillo thing was avoidable. And there are so many other instances earlier in the year where it's like he tries to get cute and it's just like, why? It just makes no sense to me.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's the same thing with the lineup too. Like, and again, not that the offense was exactly clicking on all cylinders, but they win the first two games of that Royal series, changes up the lineup completely because of lefties on the mound. And Brandon Nimmo can't lead off a game against a lefty. They end up losing that game. And then first game of the series against the Reds, again, lefty on the mound. I believe it was what I forgot the pitcher's name, but because
Nick
because he goes
Lodolo.
with his left hand, yeah, Nick Lodolo. Boom, you have Lindor leading off again, Vientos in the 2 hole, and then you have Nimmo down in the 5 hole. Like, I don't care that Mark Vientos had a big. Well, I do care that he had a big series in Kansas City, but it shouldn't warrant the fact that one big series should automatically, put you in the 2 hole when for the whole season you haven't deserved to hit that high in the order. It just doesn't make sense. And thankfully, they're facing a lefty on the mound today, and thankfully Nimmo's leading off. So thankfully, and hopefully now from the time being, whenever there's a lefty or righty on the mound, it's Nimmo that's leading off, and Lindor on the 2 hole, and then so on as we've seen the lineup for the last couple of weeks.
Especially when Nimmo's been one of the only few guys hitting right now. And on top of that, Lindor has credited Nimmo for helping him by him leading off. So I don't know. I mean, Lindor is someone that they might have to move him down the lineup soon, but I don't even know what you do there. But yeah, I mean, honestly, outside of that, I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about from throughout the series? Because we could talk about the bad defense, but that's another thing where it's like we're kind of used to it. Outside of that, I don't know if you have anything else you want to talk about this series.
Yeah, I'd never want to see Mark Vientos play first base ever again. he was not good yesterday playing first base. He was not good at all. And I know people point to like the first play of the game, because there was an error where TJ Friedel hits a ground ball, and sure, Vientos should make that play. I'm pretty sure if P was at first base, he probably makes that. He probably catches that little throw. But again, Luis Acuna, and I get it that he had the big RBI double later in the game. terrible throw by Acuna. There's just the defense, and that's another thing that's been off with this team. I mean, even the Luis Torrens throw in that second game, like from where we were sitting, and the fact that because at that point there were first and second on with I believe no outs, or there might have been one out because I forgot who was up, but the guy laid down a bunt. I thought right away from our perspective when we were sitting, I thought they were calling catcher's interference. I didn't even see that Luis Torrens threw the ball towards first base and then it went to the outfield. It's just, I mean, that's another one. Luis Torrens, I mean, he still makes great throws to pick off runners trying to steal bases, but his defense and his bats has taken a downturn ever since, taking the starting catcher job from Francisco Alvarez. Hopefully now with Alvarez back and Torrens, kind of takes a seat back as the backup catcher. Hopefully he kind of resets a bit mentally and we're able to see the Torrens that we saw in the first half of the season.
Yeah, because he has just been really freaking bad lately, especially because he's here for his defense. And that throw, by the way, was with no outs. I just checked it. And then you also had that Mauricio failed double play with Garrett on the mound in the 6th inning, which led to 2 more runs scoring. That was great. But yeah, like in terms of other things, just it was nice to see the David Wright ceremony. That was a beautiful moment during that day, at least. Just again, very, very happy that they did that. Very happy with the way the ceremony was. So yeah, number 5 in the rafters now.
Yeah, I'm just gonna go quickly.
All right, all good. See you, Matt. So I will do the remainder of the episode by myself, even though I'm not going to keep this going for too long. I will only be going for a few more minutes here, just because there's not really much more to unpack than what we already addressed. Just again, it was a very frustrating series where these are teams that you should be beating, especially if you are one of the higher paid offenses in baseball and you're not performing like it. But again, we've been beating this drum since the first pitch, and this offense still has been just anemic since then and on. Let's move on, though, to what's coming up, which is a series against the Los Angeles Angels that will start tonight at 7 o'clock. In game number 1, Tyler Anderson, who is 2-6 on the year with a 4.34 ERA, 1.41 whip, maybe a name that will be traded at the deadline. Maybe the Mets end up being in on him, which I wouldn't love it, but I digress. But he's an option there, and a decent year overall versus Kodai Senga, who's 7-3 on the year, 1.39 ERA, a 1.13 whip. Will they be able to get volume from him is really the main thing, because this team desperately needs volume, because outside of David Peterson, that does not exist with this rotation. Game number 2, Kyle Hendricks, who's 5-6 on the year, 4.88 ERA, and a 1.29 whip. A little bit of a bounce back year from the rough year with Chicago last year. So maybe he's another guy that gets moved to the deadline and goes to a better team and sees improvement, because the Angels aren't exactly the greatest pitching factory. Versus Frankie Montas, who's 2-1, a 5.03 ERA and a 1.17 whip. A little inflated there because of the small sample size. The Angels have not announced a starting pitcher for game number 3. The Mets will send out Sean Manaea, who's 0-1 with a 2.45 ERA and a 1.09 whip. To me, there is no excuse to not take 2 out of 3. I think you really got to win. I would say games 1 and 3 or games 2 and 3, like you really should be winning with Sean Manaea on the mound, even though you might not get that much volume. But either way, yeah, like again, you should be beating up on the Angels. And I know that they just beat the Phillies, but that's nothing. I mean, you have 2 fan bases in the NL East that are not happy with either of their teams. It's pretty funny with that. But either way, I'm going to wrap things up here. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Subscribe. Turn on your notifications so you know I upload or go live. And we'll see you guys in the next one.